All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the July 24th, 2024 City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Public Hearing. We appreciate you being here. We'll begin with a roll call. Chair Ayers, myself, I am here. Vice Chair Pitcher is here.
Here.
You weren't going to be here. Board Member Peterson.
Here.
Board Member Montes.
Here.
Board Member Blakeman.
Here.
Board Member Carpenter.
Here.
And Board Member Farnsworth.
Here.
Welcome. As part of the agenda, we have a consent agenda, and all of these will be read into the record and acted on in one motion. So none of these items will be discussed individually. There's any new blue cards that I need to worry about. Okay, we're good there. So we will actually have Board Member Montes read our consent agenda today.
Okay. We're going to take action on all consent agenda items. Approval of minutes from previous meetings. PZ 24091, minutes from the July 10, 2024 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. ZON 2400249, the Valvoline Instant Oil Change Sossaman, District 6, within the 1300 block of South Sossaman Road, located south of Southern Avenue and west of Sossaman Road. Major site plan modification. The request will allow development of a minor automobile repair facility. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. ZON 24-00251. Oops. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Look, it was X'd out and I still read it. Okay. ZON 24-00137, Mezzo Expansion, District 6, within the 8200 block of East Pecos Road, located west of Hawes Road on the south side of Pecos Road, rezoned from light industrial to LI with a planned area development overlay and site plan modification. This request will allow for an expansion to an existing industrial development. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. ZON 22-01052, RWC Building Supplies District 6, within the 10,600 block of East Pecos Road and within the 6,600 to 6,700 blocks of South 222nd Street, located west of Signal Butte Road on the north side of Pecos Road, major site plan modification and amending the conditions of approval for case number ZON 20-00447 and special use permit. Staff recommendations continue to August 14, 2024, Planning and Zoning Board meeting. That's the end of consent agenda.
Thank you very
Chair,
much. Do we need to
Board-
read that it was an industrial?
I would recommend adding that, just so it's clear, but also I want to clarify for the record that ZON 24-00251 is not on the consent agenda.
Did we read that one? 0251?
Oh, just
You-
to
yeah,
say
you
it.
read the
I
number.
started to say it, but.
Correct, so
Okay.
just for clarity.
We just need to include this request is for industrial, you missed that part.
Oh, did I miss that part? Okay, do you want me to reread 4B?
No, just say say the item number and then add on, and then.
Okay. ZON 22-01052, need to add, the request will allow for an industrial development.
Good enough? All right, thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Motion to approve.
And is there a second?
Second.
All right, everyone please vote. If it'll go, there we go. Vice Chair Pitcher will need your vote.
Yes.
And Board Member Blakeman.
Yes.
All right, and unanimous, that passes. Thank you for reading the consent agenda for us today. Appreciate it. All right, we'll go ahead and move
So
into,
do you do the last two, because it's a quick one, or do you have to go through in order of how they go and do the public hearing?
I was gonna go, he was just at, could we do the last two first? Is there any issue with that?
Yeah, it's within your discretion to
Yeah,
take the
we can do
agenda
that
in
if
any
you-
order.
If you'd rather do that.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through to item 5A and 5B on the consent agenda. Board Member Blakeman, I know you want to say something.
Briefcase. Yes, I'm going to recuse myself from these two.
Thank you, Board Member Blakeman, appreciate that.
And I'll just read the whole.
Would you? Okay, that'd be great.
So make a motion to approve.
Evans,
Do you need to say something, or are you good?
we need to do another presentation.
Do we?
Chair, it's at your discretion. We don't have to do another presentation unless you want one.
I don't think we're good. Does anybody on the board need to hear any more on on this one? Okay, I don't think so. All right, thanks, Evan, I
You-
appreciate it.
Sorry, Chair, board members, you do need to
a
hold
public
open
hearing.
for public comment.
Yeah, so you good there?
Before the motion?
Yes, because we got
Okay.
blue cards.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go in it without the presentation, we'll go into the public meeting for this one. We do have some blue cards. And so I'm going to go ahead, actually, let me start with this one here.
For these two?
Wait, not for these.
Chair, did you receive blue cards for
I thought I did.
5A
I'm
or
looking at the
5B?
piles differently, I'm wrong. I do not have any blue cards for
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
Okay, is there any commentary we want to do on the public meeting? On items either 5A, 5B? No. All right, we'll close the public meeting. Now, we can go to a request for a motion, go ahead.
Okay. Make a motion to approve ZON 24-00561.
I second.
Oh, I got to read it first.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Already wanting to go.
Pacific Proving Technology Campus GP Amendment, District 6, within the 10,000 to 10,400 blocks of East Pecos Road, and within the 6,200 to 6,800 blocks of the future South Chrisman Road alignment, located north of Pecos Road and east of Ellsworth Road, minor general plan amendment. This request will change the general plan character area type from mixed-use activity to employment. Staff recommendation is adoption, and I can lump both of these in the same motion, correct?
No.
No.
Ah,
No,
Okay,
general
now
plan.
you
We'll
can
just do
second.
general plan.
yeah.
So now you can do your second.
Second.
Yeah, everybody please vote. Vice Chair Pitcher, what's your vote?
Yes.
Board Member Blakeman. Actually, never mind, you cannot talk right now. All right, with one abstain, it is unanimous passing on item 5A.
Okay.
5B, looking for a motion. You can go ahead.
Item 5B, a motion to approve item 5B, ZON 24-00190, Pacific Proving Technology Campus, within the 10,000 to 10,400 blocks of East Pecos Road and within the 6,200 to 6,800 blocks of the future South Chrisman Road alignment, located north of Pecos Road and east of Ellsworth Road, rezoned from agricultural and light industrial with the planned area development overlay to LIPAD. Site plan review and council use permit. This request will allow for a data center. Recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. And all in favor? Vice Chair Pitcher, what's your vote?
Yes.
And I think we got everybody? And the same vote with Board Member Lakeman is stating it a unanimous pass of item 5B. Thank you. All right, now we go back to item 3B. All right. Who did this one? Cassidy. Where's Cassidy? There she is. We'll begin with the presentation on item 3B.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board.
Mike's not working.
There we go.
There we go. Just gotta hit it.
The case before you this afternoon is ZON 24-00251 for the Cyrus One Data Center. The site is located north of Elliott Road and west of Chrisman Road. The request is site plan review and 2 special use permits to allow for a data center. The general plan designation on the property is employment with the industrial subtype character area. The intent behind that general plan character area is to provide for a wide range of employment uses. The site is also located within the mixed-use community district of the Mesa Gateway Strategic Development Plan, which does consider business parks and other employment uses compatible with that development plan. The zoning on the site is currently planned employment park with a PAD overlay and light industrial with a PAD overlay. Indoor warehousing and storage, which is how data centers are classified, is a permitted use in both zoning districts. Here you can see an existing photo of the site. It is currently vacant. So the site plan is for 5 approximately 290,000 square foot buildings and an associated substation. As a part of the request, the applicant is requesting a parking reduction to 281 parking spaces provided. Here's the proposed landscape plan. So there are 2 special use permit requests. One is for the parking reduction from 1,615 spaces required under the zoning ordinance to 281 spaces provided. And then an increase into the maximum building height. So the PEP zoning district has no maximum building height, it's plan specific. However, the light industrial zoning district, which is the blue area to the south on the zoning exhibit, has a maximum building height of 40 feet in the LI zoning district. The applicant is requesting a height increase to 69 feet at the tallest parapet. Here are the proposed elevations. Internal and then also external, looking to the buildings from the north. The applicant did conduct a citizen participation process, which included a neighborhood meeting. One neighbor was in attendance at that meeting, and he just had general questions about the use. Since then, we've had 2 neighbors who attended the design review board who expressed opposition to the project. And we've had a number of letters and outreach from additional neighbors who have also expressed opposition to the proposed use and the height and concerns with traffic, noise, and just the overall industrial use. In summary, we find that the proposed development complies with the 2040 Mesa General Plan, as well as the criteria for site plan review and for a special use permit, and staff is recommending approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Cassidy. With that, I don't think there's any questions from the board, correct? Right now? No. We want to invite the applicant up if they do have any kind of presentation as well.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Board, and members of City staff. Sean Leroy with Cyrus One. And wanted to just touch upon, before we get into comments, just touch upon a little bit of the history of the site, what our efforts have been, and how we've kind of partnered over the last year, over a year, with city planning to give, I think, and produce what is a real sound design and fits really nicely within the tech corridor. We've owned the property since 2018. And once we got a power story that gave us some target of bridging power and leading up through a power ramp, we began entitlements a few years later. Like I said, it's over a little over a year and a half, I think, by now. We feel, and really kudos to planning staff, to city staff, engineering, members of the Development Services Department. Went through a series of sort of design review, probably 4 rounds of design review, taking city comments, taking direction with respect to design, building location, building placement. In addition to that, we furnished several reports, noise studies, geotech, parking studies, noise studies both on and off site, at the property line, on site as well. And it was those rounds of design feedback and comments that gave us the design we have today. I should say as well that city staff, in addition to being very helpful in the process, also gave us a window, I think, into what was important to the city with respect to the neighborhood that exists on the north side of the SRP transmission corridor. So we've, I think, duly incorporated those recommendations, and then some, went back to the design board, if you will, and received approval a couple weeks ago, actually, from the design board. In addition to that, with respect to questions of height, I'm sure there are questions from the public that will remain toward that end. We have addressed those, I think, sufficiently. And I would say, unique to the perspective of data centers are things such as floor height, mechanical equipment that has to dissipate noise, provide cooling, server racks, et cetera, are sort of the locus behind our request for a height increase, which as planning staff made mention is really applicable to the 3 buildings that are on the south side of the property. And we have a graphic here, in fact, that looks as a cross-section across the corridor with residences on the left of the graphic. I'm sorry, there we go. And our building, example of the north building on the right, transmission towers in the middle, and demonstrates how we've stepped back the building with respect to, this was mentioned in the study session, but step back the building as you move up, and mechanical equipment is fully screened, and that screening, as proposed, also helps dissipate and attenuate noise from any rooftop mechanical structures and units. The corridor I may have alluded to is approximately 250 feet. We are set back another 70 feet, I think, from the property line, so we're well over 300 feet from the nearest residence to the north above the transmission corridor. As well, and this is not shown on the graphic, but I can touch on it, it was in the presentation. We've provided a certain glazing or a certain type of glass, spandrel glass, which is not visible or viewable through from a neighborhood perspective, and that's replete on the north facade of our buildings to address that part of the concern. There were some comments. I personally tried to reach out to, and there was only 2 or 3 people, because that's what I was aware of at the time, that had submitted comments early enough for me to get to them before tonight's meeting. I made contact with one resident, had, I think, a good conversation over the phone, just discussing the tenets of the project, kind of our approach, what makes us tick from a design and product perspective. One comment, one resident I was not able to reach via email, but I'm happy to be able to address any questions this evening as they come up. And that's what I have. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions? on the board? Troy?
Hi, Sean. Will you talk about the, you mentioned noise mitigation efforts that were made. Will you go into a little more detail on what those are and a little more background on your noise study?
Right, yeah, and I'll preface too, we I think I mentioned we did a noise study per MESA's requirements as part of our entitlements, and there are several other studies as well. And at the property line, when we measured it, what we're modeling to, I think, meets and exceeds the city standard by saying that there is no net increase or negative impact on generated noise from a result of our construction. What I was referring to prior is shown again on the right on this graphic, is that sort of gray parapet box, if you will, on the grayscale. And that will fully screen first the visibility of any rooftop chillers, but also the thickness of the wall attenuates and both attenuates and directs the sound up versus letting it bleed out to, property lines and eventually to other parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Looking at the landscaping plan, I'm curious, the
Yeah.
trees that are along the north side that are going to act as a screen, do you know the ultimate height of what those trees will be when they're fully grown?
I don't. I know one of the comments we had from Design Review Board, which we're addressing, is where we have running species, excuse me, that will make sure they're appropriately varied. But I have Civil here. I don't know if Bo can address. Yeah, yeah. I'm happy to track that down, but I don't know offhand.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the species, see if it's on there.
Looking for this one.
Doesn't look like it's on there, okay. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Perhaps one more.
Yep.
Sean, I'm noticing on the site plan, the proposed versus future buildings, can you speak to the duration over which you plan to implement the site development? And just maybe talk a little more clearly about, is there any optionality in how you guys progress through that?
Yeah, we'll progress. The building one, I believe, will be on the upper, the north side, just to the left of the substation. And I think we will plan to work our way counterclockwise from there, if I'm not mistaken. And some of that is power related, and some of that is just making sure that when we move on to another building, that we'll have circulation and enough improvements in place that they can go along, and we don't, wind up sort of hemmed in at any sort. As far as overall, I mean, we're estimating, a year to build, maybe 9 months to a year to build.
For the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe that's maybe a clarifier for me if I'm seeing the visual correctly, because it appears to me that it's actually the southwestmost building, so perhaps even further yet from the neighborhood, but am I misunderstanding that?
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the visual for the site plan,
Yep.
and it appears as though it's actually the southwestmost building.
Did I say you're right?
Building
Is
one
that
is-
So
building
you're-
number
you're
one?
actually-
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right.
Even yet further away from the neighborhood for your
Correct.
first move.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So we'll have, I believe, in fact, we're required to do all the landscaping, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have access points, security checkpoints, security gates. So some things will come in with that first building for sure, as a matter of practice. But I stand corrected. That's right.
And then, so the first building will take about a year or so, but I guess my other question was more so to like the full development of all 5 buildings. Is that forecasted to transpire over a 5-year duration, 10-year duration?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, about 5 years or so?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Vice Chair Pitcher, Board Member Blakeman? He's reaching for something?
No questions here.
No. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We do, okay. Why don't we, the first thing I'll do here before we get to those that like to speak, we have several comments that have come in. Just so you guys know, we've all reviewed the ones that have asked not to speak. I do want to just make sure, because I've got 2 blue cards on here, they both are asking, and I'm right in the wrong pile. I thought I had 2 that said they did not wish to speak, but now I must have confused my pile here. Hold on just a second. Speak. Okay, never mind. It looks like we all want to speak. Never mind. So let's go ahead and just go online to our first. We do have one person on the line, right? James Fromm is online. So just the general kind of rules for public speaking, we'll give all of you guys 3 minutes each to be able to come up and kind of speak. We've got several to get through. That's one of the reasons why we do the 3 minutes. So we'd appreciate it if you kind of stick to that, and we'll remind you as we go through. And with that, we'll move on. So Mr. Fromm, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Or Form, it's Mr. Form, correct?
From. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My only comment in the diagram that Mr. Leroy put up earlier really does a good job of helping mitigate my concerns. But really what I want to know is what is the remedy for a resident in the future if the noise pollution mitigations they install are not successful?
So I'll tell you, Mr. Fromm, we won't be able to answer questions directly, but what we will do is we'll get through all of these questions and we'll invite them to come back on and respond to that. The board can't answer those questions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or any comments that you would like to have?
Oh, that's all. I'm only concerned about sound.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fromm. We appreciate your time. I did find 2.
Sure.
So, I promise I kind of know what I'm doing sometimes. I have Mr. Jeremy Donahue and Jamie Donahue. I'll make sure neither of you want to speak. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, thank you. We do have it, so we've read your comments. We appreciate it. We don't, well, I can. So I'll go through, the first one's from Jeremy Donahue. I do not want this approved. The high buildings will hurt the neighborhood and home values. And then Jamie, resale value, height of building, and noise are your issues, correct? All right, thank you. And so I'll read those, and so now we'll get into the public comments. I'll just go through in the order that I have. First up, we would invite James Taylor to come up, if you'd like to speak. And again, for everybody, as you come up, if you could please state your name and your address for the record. And
Yeah,
then-
James Taylor. I live at 3129 South Coyote Canyon Circle. I am in the southeast corner of the development for Mesquite Canyon. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for hearing us. I'd normally say ladies and, gentlemen of the jury, because you are deciding our fates tonight. All right, I was a cop for 21 years in Scottsdale, but I chose to live in Mesa, and I chose the neighborhood I'm in to raise my family and have that quality of life. I did not choose that property that I purchased at a good price, which is now worth more, to live in an industrial area. I did not, I was against the rezoning of the area, and now we're getting more and more. It's one change after another. Now let's approve a building that's 29 feet higher than what's already there. I built a very nice backyard. My wife and I sit outside at night, have a glass of wine. We used to look out and see the horizon and see the stars from underneath our patio. Now I look out and I see the top 6 or 7 feet of the buildings that are already there, the cement pillboxes. That's my view now. You put a building that's 29 feet higher than that, directly behind my house and closer, my view is going to be a building. That is it. I will not see any sky. I will have to walk out into my yard and look straight up to get the view that I am used to seeing in my yard, okay? This is our life. This is our family. This is what I brought my family into, have my children grow up in this. My son just got recently engaged. My future daughter-in-law came to me the other day and she goes, I would love to have our wedding in your backyard because I have the biggest property in the development. It's kind of nice. But she looked at me and she goes, I can't do it with those buildings. And those are the small ones. So it's already changing my life. You want to talk finances, taxes, all the other stuff you get from these buildings? $20,000 to buy an event area to have her wedding when she could have had it in my backyard. So this isn't just approving for Cyrus. If they need that much space, find a different piece of property that you can build as high as you want to build. Put it near the air park where a lot of these things in Scottsdale had been put. Not in our neighborhoods, not in my backyard, because that is my backyard. That is what I will see. It doesn't matter how pretty you try to make a building, I will look at a building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We appreciate your time. Next, I have Scott Deneau. Did I say that right? I hope I said that right.
No, you didn't. It's Dunn. Scott
Well,
Dunn,
I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed.
3132 South 96th Circle. So I am I would be on the northwest portion of this parcel. My main concern again is just height, okay? 65 foot, again, I am a degreed engineer, but I do not know how to put up data centers. I just want to make sure that this is consistent with the normal height that you would find on a building like this, okay? The second would be noise, and then the other concern I would have is any radiation or emissions coming out of the switch yard. So those are the 3 things that I'm most concerned about.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
That's
Mr.
it.
Dunn. We appreciate your time. Next, I have Faustino Betancourt.
Hello, I'm Faustino Betancourt. I live at 3122 South Verde Circle. When we purchased our home in Mesquite Canyon, directly north of this project, we knew there would eventually be industrial buildings going in there, but we felt comfortable with the provisions that were already put in place with the Elliott Corridor, with an emphasis on protecting our neighborhoods and ensuring compatibility. There were several reasonable protections put in place for the community, including a maximum building height of 50 feet within 600 feet of the SRP lines, and to maintain generous buffers between the neighboring communities, both of which are in question today and being nearly doubled. In the citizen participation report dated August 14th, 2014, building height was listed as a major concern by neighbors. This concern was addressed at that time, stating the development standards within the overlay also require a greater deal of scrutiny for compatibility with the residential neighborhoods to the north of any development within 300 feet of the transmission line easement. All we are asking you for today is to live up to that promise and to hold up that development to that higher standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benko. Appreciate your time. Frank Brontesma? Bronsema? I'm trying.
How do you get to the top again? I'm Frank Bronsema at 3121 South Verde Circle, and I was at the July 9 meeting. I'm retired, so I was just kind of curious what this was all about. What was handed out to some people, but not everybody, were these meeting notices. They talked about a 2-story building and this illegible blueprint. And not only that, the meetings during working hours. Most of the people in the neighborhood work, and they're not going to take time off from work to go look at this silly map. So I came to the meeting. I was curious. And I saw what you were proposing, and it was outrageous. So I took some of your slides and talked to almost every neighbor up here. And most people didn't even know about this. They did not get notices, and they were very much opposed. So this is, forget Cyrus One saying they handed out notices. Forget it. That did not happen. And I can go to the next slide here. If I know how to page down, here we go. So my big thing is the neighborhood was not informed, and everybody I talked to was unaware of this and violently objected to it. And you need to hear the neighborhood. We're part of Mesa. And there's a lot of concerns, but everybody else can voicing what their concerns are on this, but not talking to the neighborhood where you're building these damn tall buildings right next to it. That's wrong. This shows, here's what we got in the mail, these blueprints that you can't read. I come to the meeting and we see the rendering. Which one would get your attention? If you're living there and somebody talks about building something in your backyard, you probably ignore this silly blueprint you can't read. But when you see this picture, holy cow, no way in the world are you going to allow that. If it was your house, would you allow buildings this big to be built 100 yards from your house? I doubt it. Don't let them do it to us. In the neighborhood, all these homes were built in the 1900s. A lot of the neighbors I talked to are the original owners. And all the property there was zoned residential. In 2014, you're talking about the Elliott Road Technology Center, and you rezoned it to light industrial. Now you're talking about building massive buildings right by our houses. And so what I'm asking for you, do not approve this. I'm not against data centers. Just don't put them next to our houses. And at a minimum, do not approve the extra height. If the extra height, if not making buildings taller causes them a problem, maybe them moving to a different location would work. So please do not approve the height. City of Chandler has a Cyrus One plant that had tons of problems. And most of it was noise. So I went over and took a look at it. And if you look at this map, the Cyrus One area is not next to houses. And yet the neighborhood that you can see far to the right had tons of problems. Look at us in Mesa. These giant buildings, bigger buildings, are closer right up against the houses. If they had a problem in Chandler, what are we going to have here in Mesa? I mean, that's totally wrong. You do not do that. Last but not least, if you build those damn things, nobody's going to want to buy a house that faces a big 69-foot tall concrete building at the end of the court. Our property value is going to go in the toilet. Is Mesa going to compensate us for the loss of property values? So please coordinate with the neighborhood. That has not been done, and the neighbors are very much opposed to this. That's
Thank you, Mr. Brontesma. I appreciate your time coming in. Ms. Todd Kane?
My name's Todd Kane. I'm 3124 South 96th Street. Thank you, board members, for allowing us to talk today. My major questions are concerning the basic height and the sound. And if I understand Sean correctly, he's stating that there's going to be 0 sound increase. Is that what he said? That's what I picked up. I don't think that's the case when this is all finalized and built. Also, I would like Sean to come up here and talk about all those extensive problems in Chandler. That was such a concern that they've considered, if they haven't already, passed city ordinances to not allow any more data centers in Chandler because of Cyrus 1. That's pretty much all I have to say outside of, I agree with everybody and everything they've said. So I won't repeat what they've all said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. We appreciate that. Okay, let me get this one. Michael Range? Rangel. Well, Dr. Rangel, I will, you earned that title. I'll give that one to you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Michael Rangel. I live at 3140 South 96th Circle. When I saw the fencing put up right close to right on the edge of the community that's designated for building, I had my attention really, really focused on what was happening there. Now, we did receive a letter in the mail. I tried my best to decipher that map. It is so small, I used a magnifying glass. And then I did decide, looked at it closely, and they have a huge generation of electricity in that area. We have the SRP main power lines going in that area as well. It emits a radiation. And with this radiation, we have a lot of kids that play on that backside, a lot of people that like to walk there. That's going to increase the radiation and ionization. And let me tell you, radiation ionization destroys cells, can cause cancer, and I'm concerned about that. The other thing is, again, the height of the building. I live right next to that, going to be that monstrosity, and they can look right in my backyard. Now, that's an invasion of privacy. And I don't know if you're a homeowner, but if you have people can look over into your yard, that's an invasion of privacy. I'm concerned about how this took place. I'm concerned how it was just ramrod through with no discussion in the community. They didn't even let the board, the Mesquite Canyon board, know what's going on. That to me is deception. And I'm considerably angry about this disinformation and no information to the community. Now, we've been here in Mesa for over 20 years. We love Mesa. We want to vote for people that support Mesa. But let me tell you, this really rules the day when they can put up over 60 feet or 70 feet is now being discussed, a monstrosity that destroys the community, that destroys the property values. And do we really need another data center in that location or anything in that regards? It's a travesty. They had a lot of room in that area to put that facility away from the community. But again, I am worried about the power source that they need, the ionization and radiation, and the SRP power lines, which will produce the radiation. Again, I walk there every day. I do 7 miles. I see everybody walking around. I get kids and their bikes and everything walking around there. That destroys tissue. And when they're young, it destroys more. Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Rangel. Appreciate your time. Amber Welsh. I think it's mostly the handwriting.
That's good, right?
Hi.
Hi, my name is Amber Welch. I live at 3137 South 96th Circle. I've lived in the community since 2009. I have a very young family, so my priority, obviously, coming into the community, and I should say I'm actually a native Arizonan, born and raised. I'm actually fifth generation Arizonan, so take pride in the state and the city for sure. We moved into the community wanting to raise our family there. I have two very small young children, so my biggest thing is the safety and soundness for them. So to Michael's point, radiation is a big thing for me. I'm very concerned about that. I know I did speak with Mr. Leroy, and we talked about maybe producing some environmental studies, or if any radiation testing has been done. We also live in a stone throw away from the elementary school that's there. Has that been taken into consideration? That school is actually an A+ rated school, and so if we're talking about security of this building, what securities are being put in place for the schooling that's a stone throw away from that? The other thing I wanted to mention is the town hall meeting. I appreciate that you said you went to the meeting. I actually emailed the management company and received a response back from them that said, I'm sorry to advise you that the HOA does not get involved with development. That is why you did not receive anything. It's my opinion that if this is, a big building going in, a town hall should have been conducted. A lot of us Denver even received notifications. So Frank brought a lot of it to our attention. I spoke to a lot of other parents in the neighborhood, and they had never received anything. So just want to take that into consideration. Again, if you were to live in our community or live next to something like this, how would that affect your family and your property values and the health of your family? Thank you for your time. And just for the record, I oppose this building.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Welch. We appreciate your time. Anson Gilbert. And of course,
Count doesn't start till I get here. My name is Anson Gilbert. I live 3129 South Verde Circle. I've lived in that community since 2004. I came to the meeting with Frank on July the 9th for the Design Review Board, and I got the same paperwork that they had. I wasn't aware of the supposed meeting that they had on 6/24 for the community. I did not receive that. After this last board meeting, when we saw what they were proposing, about fell over backwards, we went back and got the same thing in the mail again, and I still can't read it. There's no link to go look at it so you can get something larger. My big issue really was the lack of transparency on what they were trying to do. When we came to the last meeting here and saw what they were proposing, I thought, well, why in the heck didn't they send that to us right up front so we would have seen the height and what it was supposed to look like? I kind of feel like it was the lack of transparency and the intentions without the facts backing it up really did upset me. And then when they said that they had the meeting on the 24th, on June 24th, they had one person show up. Well, I'm not surprised by that because when we went around, Frank, he had every cul-de-sac from Chrisman down to where the building is going to end, and no one that he talked to then handed these things out was aware of that meeting. So the zoning was clearly known before this company showed up. They said they had this property in 2018. That zone was already established. I actually thought when they tried to do that light industrial, but it's coming. So when I went out there and saw what was already there, if you go looking east of Chrisman, those buildings, I looked at the setback and I looked at the height. They're 40 feet or so. So when I came to this meeting and figured out it's going to be about 30 feet closer to us and substantially higher, I could not tell that by what they sent us in the mail. So I want you to know that I oppose it for that reason, and I'm hoping they would at least enforce the planning zone, that the rules that they established for light industrial. I'd like to see that enforced if possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. We appreciate it. All right, is there any other people online or anything? I don't think so. I think we're good. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and invite the applicant to come up to respond to these comments.
Thank you again, and I'll do my best to summarize and hit as many as the overlaps I can. How much time do I have?
Well, Well, if you want me to respond to all your comments, you might need a little bit more than 3 minutes, but I think, go ahead and
I'll
go.
do my
We'll just
best,
kind of
yeah.
see how we
I'll
go.
do my best. And to go, I'll probably go back to where I started, and this, these notes as a summary were submitted as part of the record. But there's a feeling that there's a lack of transparency, a feeling of, that I'm hearing anyways, of it not truly being a public process. So as to transparency, I mean, we have owned the property since 2018. We began preliminary studies at that point to develop, a data center campus. We've had, just in the last year and a half, we've had a major write-up in the Puget Sound Business Journal. We've been listed, I believe, at one point in time, at least on the city's website, with a placard or a box that says Cyrus One on our site. We were required as part of the public outreach meeting, which precedes design board and our meeting here this evening. We were given a list of radius of 1,000 feet, I believe, of residents, addresses, and neighbors we needed to mail to. We've done that. We did that as part of the, like I said, the public outreach meeting, which had, yes, the one attendant, but we satisfied that. We've done it at design board. We've done it for planning and zoning. So while, I am sympathetic definitely and want, to be as open and transparent as we possibly can, and happy to always address and answer any questions to the best of my ability, we did satisfy that requirement provided by the city and happily did so. With respect to, many comments came back with respect to the height, and my graphic's gone now. I don't know if I can retrieve it, but I think it's important to realize that we're separated by over 300 feet, and the actual max height of the buildings on the north, which is not technically governed by a set height limit. And that's, I think, important to, it's a plan base or a case-by-case base based on the project. I think that's important to remember. But then also, if you remember the graphic, that the max height, the highest point is stepped back, which would amount to, I mean, more than 300 feet, to the highest peak. And again, that is not capricious, not just draw a number out of the hat. That is to support the design of the building, which supports the customer that we think we're going to attract, which supports the equipment that makes a data center not just what it is and how it functions, but also addresses things such as I did before with respect to things like noise and attenuating noise on the rooftop and protecting it or keeping it on site, if you will, versus spilling over into other properties, over property lines. And similarly, neither is our design aesthetic, language, approach to design capricious and just throw a cement box, up there, call it good, and be thankful for it. But we, like I said before, went through 4 rounds of reviews with planning staff, really, and they did a marvelous job of, I think, giving us great direction, because when you can go with a large development to the DRB board and get, not just a buy-off, but compliments on the design aesthetic and our attention to detail, materials, colorways, modulation, articulation, that I think speaks volumes from a design perspective. Pardon me. A couple comments were brought up, and I'm happy to address them with regards to our Chandler campus. So I believe there are some residences that are within, certainly within the vicinity, I think on the north side. And this, early on in the process, there were some concerns with respect to noise. To my knowledge right now, and I know the guy that operates out of that and is dedicated to sort of the public outreach, I'm not aware of any complaints, at this point. Anytime recently, I've been with the company only a year and a half, but not aware of any such complaints with respect specifically to noise. So a couple people also asked about, and I don't want to speak out of turn with respect to the city's policy in terms of how we would sort of ongoing manage noise, but I would imagine, you know, a concern would be raised through the city and how we've handled it, you know, historically many years ago, like I said, at Chandler, is to, A, we probably studied it, and B, we've got strictures and structures in place to kind of deal with that and answer questions, address problems rather if they come up. But I'm not anticipating any. Our modeling shows that, which was required by Planning Department for submittal. So, you know, and like I said, I can't speak to what the process at Mesa is for addressing that. But, and I think the way we've designed and structured the rooftop units, other mechanical structures, in fact, are on the south side of the buildings. How we've designed and fashioned what's on the roof, I do not feel is injurious or will cause you know, harm to the neighbors from a noise perspective, for sure. There were, and I spoke with Mrs. Welsh on the phone about a few things, but one of the questions that came up once or twice as well here tonight and did in our conversation is with respect to radiation emissions or emitting of radiation. I don't know what, we will have a switch yard and a substation on site as required by SRP. I do not know what their standards are. I do not know how any sort of numbers or figures would relate to the towers that are already there, and I guess presumably, you know, emitting something similar. But as I said on the phone call to Mrs. Welsh, I'd be happy to chase that down from an internal standpoint. We weren't required, to my knowledge, to produce any of that reporting or study as part of our submittal. So. But happy to chase that down. I did want to address it here at the microphone, but I do not have sort of any special insight into that specifically. And then lastly, at least per my notes here and sort of as a summation, I'd go back to the use of the data center in this location and how, off the top of my head, I believe zoning was effectively in place for almost 20 years. We've owned it from 2018. We never said it would be anything but a data center, as that's what we are data center developers and owners and operators, so that's what we do, and we haven't deviated from that. We've been, I think, more than open and transparent, certainly with city staff and stakeholders. We've had several rounds of in-person meetings with city manager, assistant city manager, relevant city council members that are either over that area or have a special like or dislike for a data center. So I think we've been very open and have desired to be very open and transparent. And to the extent that I can, I think I've extended that and will continue to and desire to any public resident of Mesa. And we're looking forward to being those good neighbors of improving the Elliott Tech corridor there with a product that I think we're proud of, I think the city would be proud of, and will definitely contribute to the economic well-being and tax base within the city. So that's, I hope I've got at least a summary. If you have questions or you tell me if I need to address anything else.
I think we're good with the public. We're good here.
I have a question.
Oh, can we do that in public comment?
Chair, board, yes, you are able
We're
to
good.
direct
Okay,
questions.
Sean, a couple questions. One on the site plan on the north property line shows a 12-foot opaque wall. But then that was the only sheet they gave us. It didn't give any details. Can you add some color to what opaque wall means or what the materials
Be
are?
a CMU wall, 12 feet tall on that, and it will run. And this was something that came out of our design review. The suggestion came down early on, and we were able to certainly catch it, is for screening purposes for the residents to the north to run that wall the length of the property, which is, I think, over and above what we'd probably be required at a base of the code. And so that's 12 feet, screening, opaque, and I believe we're gonna design it in such a way that there's some articulatedness to it, so it's not just a running
some
block wall,
offsets on it.
some depth to it, right?
Okay, gotcha. And then, can you speak to whether the difference in noise generation from the Chandler facility compared to this one, if it's similar technology, or if this one has different things, and if so, what are those different things, and speak to that a little bit. And then also whether the Chandler one has a private substation as well.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, they're building a second one to accommodate that campus. But yeah, same technology or similar, same cooling systems, same basic units, and same basic approach. From what I understand, this is getting more into sort of our design and engineering side of the business. But you know, as I mentioned, and I was actually at the campus about a month ago for a public meeting, and I have not heard from staff there at the facility or from Chandler City Planning or Economic Development of any recent complaints. Those were, and I say only because I'm newer, but you know, well before my time, and was well before even the sort of structure and leadership we have in place now at the facility. And in fact, I think someone brought it up, but Chandler did pass an ordinance, but it didn't expressly outlaw or ban data center development, but it put in place particularly steps for sound studies, basically.
And does noise, is the noise mitigation then on this, the architecture, the top screen parapet, is that any different, or is that the same as the Chandler?
I think it's really similar in approach and kind. And I know, you know, in the design sort of engineering meetings I've sat in on for this campus, I mean, that's what we're really going for on those rooftop units. And then I think if you were to look at the site plan, all other ground-mounted equipment is on the opposite side of the building, effectively by design, by approach.
Gotcha. And then combined question for staff, would some of the residents asked about noise, if there's noise issues, how does that go? Is this a situation where a good neighbor policy is appropriate to facilitate that, or what would if the city were to receive some noise concerns for that, what would be the process?
Chair, Board Member Peterson, so there was not a good neighbor policy required as part of this application, so there's no conditions of approval stepping to any such document. It would fall back on the noise ordinance per the city if there were any sort of complaints. That would be the remedy.
Okay, gotcha. And if to the applicant, is a good neighbor policy something the applicant's willing to have to address these issues, or is that the appropriate mechanism, I guess is the question, if there's a agreement to do that?
Well, the board could make a recommendation of adding the stipulation if we wanted to as part of ours. So that's something we can discuss as a board when we get the discussion.
Gotcha. It is that mechanism would be an appropriate one that then has the dialogue between the city residents and the owner for issues that come up in the future. Is Is that the correct mechanism, is what I'm asking?
I think the one of the questions I have, and again, this is not necessary for him, I think the issue we have at this point is what the apparatus will be. The HOA is not involved in these processes, from my understanding. Is that what I heard before?
Chair, board members, so the HOA was notified as part of
They're
all.
notified, but
are.
they're not engaging.
So if they don't choose to engage,
So it would be hard for us to put anything in place as a stipulation because that entity is not engaged in this process. Is that?
the board could still add a condition if they desired about a good neighbor policy, and basically that would require them to set up some parameters about mitigation effects if there were complaints about how to contact them.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm trying to understand actually a little bit more about the HOA's lack of involvement. Is that by choice or by other means? Because that's an interesting clarifier for me. If the HOA is choosing to not engage in this conversation and process, I'll hold my own.
The city can't really speak to it.
Exactly.
That's great.
Are you asking the public, out of curiosity?
I'm asking, well, candidly, I'm asking staff. But if there's not an answer from staff, then if I can, I would open up to the
Yeah,
public.
Chair Board Member Farnsworth, so the HOAs were notified as part of the citizen participation process. So we do have the mailing list and they are on the mailing list. So we know they were invited to the neighborhood meeting and they were notified for both the Design Review Board and the Planning and Zoning Board meetings.
So to make sure I understand the comment correctly, and I apologize, the notification process was fulfilled as per requirement.
That's correct.
The election to participate remains upon the individual resident and the HOA as an entity to choose to participate or not.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
You good, Troy? Yep. Any other questions from the board on this side?
Can I have a response?
Not right now, sir.
Let's see. Oh, there was a comment about what's the standard size for a typical height for a data center. I was curious if this is an outlier or if this is what the norm is at this time for data center heights.
I don't know across competitors, products, but I would say it's not unusual for us if you just, again, go, it's not a random, we need this, we need that. It's based on, design parameters and construction parameters. For instance, starting at the base level, many times you'll have a raised floor to support the weight and the motion and the running of the equipment on the ground floor. And then from there, I would say there's no wasted space, but you work yourself up. And then I think we're at 53 feet, if I'm not mistaken. We talked about that tonight, to the building proper, at ceiling height. And then what's above that is the necessary equipment to help run, the data center in part, but also mitigate noise, cooling, as needed, et cetera.
So I look at the height and the sound issues, and it seems like the height is right around the 53 feet, and then it jumps up to the 69 feet.
Right.
But that screening is there, which is somewhat necessary for the noise reduction.
It's aesthetic and for noise as well to mitigate noise. And again, the way I vision it is it directs it up. It's going to absorb or direct up. Nothing's going to penetrate through a solid. And we're not talking. I have done projects in the past where there were air conditioning units, and you used to put just a metal 45. They're not aluminum. They're thick and carry the weight and the thickness to address what's needed up on the roof.
Okay.
No, good. Vice Chair Pitcher or Board Member Blakeman, are there anything for you guys? No.
Just two quick questions, sorry if I might, for the applicant. One, just looking again back at your site plan, buildings 2 and buildings 4, the northmost buildings adjacent to the residences, were there any studies done about maybe rotating them 90 degrees and potentially achieving even yet further horizontal separation from the residents? So this would be question 1. And then question 2, you suggested that your sister property in Chandler is undergoing expansion from the electrical capacity side. It doesn't appear as though there's room on this site, but might there be a future electrical expansion to the substation, either in that same area where it's currently proposed or on one of the other adjacent open spaces?
Right, yeah. So for your first question first, there's consideration given for that. In fact, we'll routinely, when we have, actually even starting back prior to ownership, but we'll routinely have a test fit, and we'll run different scenarios. And sometimes at the onset, it's a little gray because we don't know dimensions. We don't always know what city requirements are for setbacks, and so we're playing with kind of Lego pieces to see what we can make work and provide for access, parking, and a big question there is always where and how large does the substation have to be. So we played with that earlier on, and I think a lot of that orientation is related to the size of the sub, which was increased at one point, in the course of design, but then also access where we need security, and where we have some internal functions that need to fit and support, not just the buildings, but what the power provider's requirements are for the yard. And then please repeat your second question, if you would.
No, I think you answered it. It was essentially just about the potential for expansion. Or addition of a second sub.
I think on this site we're pretty well maxed out, yeah, and with everything with internal drives, parking, some common area, and a fair bit of landscaping. I think I don't see any room, and Chandler is a really large campus, and the existing sub's small. And this one will complement that in Chandler.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else on yours? No, okay. All right, thank you, appreciate your coming up. So with that, I'm gonna close the public hearing and I'm gonna open it up for the board to have discussion on this item.
So can I ask a question for staff?
Actually, can we reopen it if you have, he's got a question for staff. Yes. We can do
Chair,
that
board
with-
members, during your discussion, you are also permitted to call staff or audience members for questions, but it's not an engaged dialogue back and forth, it's merely for questions.
Gotcha. So question is, there was reference by one of the residents that there was a previous policy about height limitations within 650 feet, within 600 feet of the SRP easement. Is that a thing, or do you have any more clarity on that?
Yeah, Chair, Board Member Peterson. So what the resident was referring to is the Elliott Road Technology Corridor overlay. So as part of that overlay, there is some height limitations within 600 feet. Well, the SRP easement itself, it shows it as 250 feet, and the distance between the north property line where the residents are adjacent to there, and then 600 feet south, there's an area where it's limited to a 50-foot height. And then beyond that, it's unrestricted. Well, it's not unrestricted, but it's up to 150 feet in height that they could go up to. But this applicant did not opt in to the Elliott Road Technology Corridor, so they are not subject to those height limitations.
Oh, so that's, so it's not a, so what's that called then if it's not it's not a requirement for that property, it's more of a guideline within?
So the Elliott Road Tech Corridor, so it's an overlay zone that's over that area, and that was established as an incentive to bring in some technology sort of businesses. And as part of that, if they opt in, they could do administrative review, site plan reviews. But there are limitations on some of the uses which are permitted within that tech corridor. So the underlying zoning remains until a time where they apply to opt into that overlay.
Okay.
And then at that time, they would be subject to the standards of the Elliott Road Tech Corridor.
Okay, so the zoning, the statutory limitation on height is in the PEP, unlimited or project specific, and then in the LI 40?
That's correct.
Okay.
You guys have any questions for staff or anything? No?
I think that clarified because I had a question, just the limitations.
Well, I mean, I'll chime in here. I mean, I think, you know, I'm looking for anyone that would like to make a recommendation at all, but I'm kind of torn on this one a little bit, I'll be honest. For kind of what you were just talking about, Troy, I think that's something, I know that they didn't have to opt into the corridor, but that was something that was sold to residences that were going along there. I have a little bit of an issue with this, with the use permit on the building height specifically on buildings 2 and 4. It's just very close to that second rendering. It's just showing that right on those houses. It's just uncomfortable. However, this is also a corridor, it's been there. This is not something new. This has been something that's been planned for some time. And that's where for myself, I'm a little bit torn on this, personally, because I see nothing here. I think staff did a good job. One other thing, I just want to clarify, when you see something, for example, in a building, it says a maximum height of 50 feet, as an example. That is not the absolute height of a building. That is usually typically to what the roof line is, right? So what they're asking for is literally a 3 feet in addition to what would have been in the original height limitation, which is again, not required for them, but we're technically talking about a 3 foot difference. So it's not as significant as would have been in another situation. However, I do feel for the neighbors here. And so that's where personally, I'm torn a little bit on this case.
Gotcha. I echo, Chair, some of your comments and sentiments. That's hence why I was asking the questions about rotating the buildings, some of the optionality on buildings 2 and 4. I do think, to even some of the residents' comments around transparency, I think it's maybe arguable about what happened, but I do think that, and maybe this is, I don't know, permissible comment for staff is, as these things do go out in the future, inclusion of renderings like this up into and beyond a site plan, if that's possible to make that a requirement, I would advise something like that because it is compelling and does help communicate the vision significantly greater than what the site plan does. But two, I'm also mindful of some of the other conversations you had, right? And I think that specifically the clarification around their opting out of the Elliott Tech corridor is notable, right? So the other thing I would maybe ask for a conversation around is I agree potentially on a stip around good neighbor policy. I'm curious on some sort of a stipulation around an EMF study and radiation study on the site, and as feedback comes back on that and what the risks are, if there's an opportunity to maybe revisit or potentially impose some additional constraints around remediation.
Chair, board members, I don't believe that you could put a stip
They can't do
to come back at a later time.
Okay.
However, you are able to defer action if you're looking for additional information or an alternate solution.
I think chime in here, Jay, but I think the hard part with that is that the lines that are already behind the site are probably causing more of that issue than this site itself. I mean, Jason,
that's probably a dual circuit 230 kV line and a 500 kV line that run back there, and those do feed the valley, as was mentioned. A switch yard and a substation, I don't know that actually changed the amount of EMFs, but I could be totally wrong. I'm no engineer and I'm no scientist, but I would say that those studies are available at the power company's website, so they can be researched and reviewed, and those should be available there. So I would go that route. I look at the size of the substations. They're a little bit larger than what's typical. I think 300 by 300 is the standard for Salt River project, but there's probably a reason here because of the demand load from the data centers. But again, just because they're larger doesn't necessarily mean the expansion question that you had. Those bays will come online as those buildings get built out. I don't know that there will be a change unless the engineering significantly changes for what they're doing in the building to draw more power into there. And again, I don't believe that would change the amount of EMFs because the power's already going on those lines that run parallel to the site and the neighborhood. So I know this area. We get, so I work for Salt River Project. We get complaints from the neighborhood about people riding quads and horses and all sorts of stuff. And we've been asked to gate this and wall it off. But since the community owns the land underneath that, so that there's kind of a nexus point there of what SRP can do and what the neighborhood can do to to do that. But I would say if there is a concern, I would think that the original developer of the neighborhood would have reviewed that, because I believe those power lines were there well in advance of the neighborhood. So if that's the concern, I would say go look at what's available at SRP's website on EMS specifically.
Chair, board members, I would just caution, because the substation is SRP, it is a exempt entity. So this is not a council use permit, as we saw with the previous cases earlier today, where we're considering that use itself. So I just caution you to keep it within the purview of the 2 special use permits and the site plan itself.
So as a transition from Rachel's comment to keep within our purview and following our training that we just received in the study session, I was reviewing through, and where this is a special use permit, it's not a rezone. And for us as a planning zoning board, that those are different, our purview is different in both of those. And so I was going through the training on the use permit, consistency with general plan, check, zoning district, check, adequate public facilities, check, approval for some minor things, that's a check. So the one question mark comes in the impacts to the surrounding area. And I think that's where the brunt of the neighbors' comments are. So then I'll just verbalize what's in my head for the record is, and then boiling those down again with what's in our purview, it comes down to height and noise. Noise, it sounds like with the study the city's required and everything else, that there's been a lot of effort to mitigate that and to minimize that. I do think if they're having a good neighbor policy would be a good recommendation to address those if there are future needs for that. And then on the height, so on the height being a little bit taller, like Ben said, you're talking 3 feet to the roof, and then you have the screening over the top, which adds height, but it has purpose, which helps the noise too, because if it's not there, then the noise would be worse. And so then just some thoughts that went through my head was on the, is it a matter of a lot of times when height is an issue, then you look at screening. And the row of trees along the north side, they're mesquites, which don't grow super tall. But then based on the comments the neighbors were making, taller trees would only screen more of their view. So I don't know that taller trees address anything. And frankly, comparing to other data centers, the level of architectural quality and design of these is I would, not being an architect, but I'd say it's on a higher end from that. So the architecture of it is nicer in addressing that height as well. I do note too that pretty much all except for the far southeast corner of the homes along the south end of the neighborhood are side to the south rather than backing, and which does, and I don't know if that was intentional from the original developer to mitigate what the power lines or what could have been from the future, but that is an offsetting factor in practicality, and so that's where my thoughts are. I think I hear the noise concerns, particularly buildings 2 and 4, and I do think a good neighbor policy would be something meaningful.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So just to clarify one question, so by right with this current zoning, what is the maximum height? So say it's not this developer, it's another. What's their height limitation?
Per case.
Sorry, my microphone. Chair Board Member Carpenter. So it has 2 zoning districts. So the maximum height in the planned employment district is per site plan approval. And then within the LI district, it's 40 feet.
Okay, so we're looking at 13 feet plus the screen wall as far as the variance. Okay, Yeah, I struggle with the same issue as far as if you were to set it back, does that even resolve the site horizon issue? Because there's still going to be height, even if it's, say, that's 600 feet away from the SRP corridor. Does that change it much? I don't know what the wall is south of the community, but you know, if an average 6 foot person is looking at an 8-foot wall, is their sight going to go up high enough to actually see the building? You know, it's difficult to tell. How far would you have to step it back to not see the buildings? Is, you know, then you're getting really into the details, and it's, yeah. So that's kind of how my mind is playing devil's advocate, playing how to resolve and look at this. But yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah, actually, Vice Chair Pitcher and Board Member Blakeman, do you guys have anything on your side as well? Just listening in. No.
No, I don't have any further comments. I think that you've really articulated my issues on them as well. So.
Go ahead.
No, if you have a comment, I was going to attempt a motion, but go ahead with your.
No, I think what it comes down to is, so I struggle with the good neighbor policy. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how that would be enforced. I don't see how that would really work necessarily. The noise, there's apparatus in place for noise, which I'm not as concerned about the noise. I think they've done a decent job with that one. The height is the one that I do have an issue with. However, I think at this point, you know, trees, for example, you're talking about trees that would be 250 feet away from the residential, and that's not going to do anything to screen. So at the end of the day, I think we're kind of in a spot where I will say that, you know, I think that I will support this moving forward, and I know that's probably not what a lot of the people here would like to hear. There is more opportunity for you guys to kind of speak to this, but from where we are, from the purview that we have at the board, I think I will be supporting this one reluctantly. So go ahead, Troy, if you have a motion you'd like to make.
Well, no, I'm thinking more, so if someone else has one.
Chair, I just want to make one clarification. So the board is taking action on this. You are the approvers of the site plan and the special use permit, so they are not going to city council.
Oh, that's true, you're right. That's right, thank you. Troy, what were you gonna say? Go for it. I can do it if you want.
All right, I'll attempt a motion here and do what you want with it. So, motion to approve case 3B-ZON 24-00251, Cyrus One Data Center within the 3,200 to 3,400 blocks of South Chrisman Road and within the 3,200 to 3,400 blocks of 96th Street, located north of Elliott Road and west of Chrisman Road. Site plan review and special use permit. This request will allow for a data center and with approval with conditions and with an added condition that the applicant to work with the city to form a good neighbor policy for in the event of future noise issues related to the function of the site.
So for clarity, if I understand, so you're making a motion to approve with this added stipulation of some form of a good neighbor policy would be in place with the neighbors. Anything that he needs to add to that as far as a motion?
I believe that the way you phrased it is specific enough for our purposes here.
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second on that motion?
Sorry,
Oh.
Chair, board members, Rachel brings up a good point that part of that stipulation should have a time frame attached to it, perhaps before any permits are issued.
Good point.
Modify the additional stipulation that a good neighbor policy be formed and in place before building permits are issued.
All right, is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So a second, all in favor, please vote. Vice Chair Pitcher?
Yes.
Board Member Blakeman?
Yes.
All right, and with that, with 4 yeses and 3 nos, that does pass as a motion. Appreciate everybody on the board for that one. All right, I think that, thank you, everybody, for being here today. So any updates from staff outside of that?
Chair, no further updates.
All right, with that, I would request a motion to adjourn the board meeting.
So moved.
Any second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. All in favor? We have to reset that there.
Yes.
You're doing
Yes.
multiple jobs over there. Vice Chair Pitcher,
Yes.
Board Member Blakeman,
Yes.
and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.